Trick your treat. Halloween night, kids ran through the neighborhood dressed in their costumes laughing. Some walked with their parents, and a few kids walked in groups. 4 boys walked together. Josh, dressed as a masked serial killer holding a rubber knife. Wayne, dressed as a vampire with a cape. Little Victor dressed as a doctor with fake blood on his white coat. And Paul, dressed as an evil clown. The boys went to every house on the block. Then they hurried back to their tree house to dump their candy just to go back out for more. The boys went to the next street, then the next street after, then the next. They joked and shoved one another as they walked. Paul spotted a house sitting a few miles away from the neighborhood. The house was surrounded by tall trees. Victor, the youngest of the bunch, nudged Paul, signing to him to keep on moving. But something about the house grabbed Paul's attention. Paul squeezed his clown nose, making it sound, then told his friends they're going to that house. That's the house we're going to next. Josh started talking, saying he never noticed the house before, and his mother drives this way to work all the time. Wayne then told a story that he was told by his older brother when he was in 2nd grade. The story goes like this.
There was an old haunted house that used to appear in the places around the neighborhood, and only a few people encountered it. The house only appears on Halloween night.
Is that a real story? Victor asked, looking worried.
No, it's fake. My brother's just trying to scare me, man.
Look at Josh, he's scared.
You scared, Josh? There could be a ghost or a witch inside there. I mean, what if there is?
Wayne says to Josh. Josh waited back as his friends walked over to the house. An owl hoots. Josh jumps as a large owl sits in a tree over him, hooting. The owl's head jolts to the side, then it flies away. Josh runs over to his friends, afraid the owl might try to attack him. Paul wiggles his fingers at his friends, taunting them, making fun of what's to come.
Dude, this is creepy, man.
Hey, this is where Victor's grandma lives. Shut up, Paul. Paul walks up the stairs, then knocks on the door. The others join him. Trick or treat, they all say with smiles. The door opens up, and an elderly woman peeks out at them. She then opens her door after undoing the locks. She holds out a basket filled with candy. The boys reach inside, grabbing a handful. The old woman stops them as they begin to leave by grabbing Paul's arm. Paul is shocked. He almost yelled but held his fear back.
Do you want to see something scary? Upstairs in the room on the left. Go in and you'll find a scare. A true scare of the night. It will be the most scariest Halloween ever, my dear sweets.
I think we should. Wayne shook his head yes.
About time for a real haunted house show. I need this.
Wayne says, moving into the house. Paul smirked a bit, then went inside. Alright, let's do this. Come on, Josh. Don't be a chicken. Whatever. Victor goes in after, feeling he needed to prove something to the other boys. Josh stood outside holding his candy.
Come on now. You don't want to be the only one in school who hasn't seen the best scare of the night. It's okay, darling. Come inside.
The old woman says. The gray-haired woman stood there in her old wrinkled-up dress with her leathery wrinkled skin in Josh's view. Her old wise eyes looked at him. Her bony fingers rested on his shoulder.
Come on now.
Josh finally stepped inside the home. Inside the house, it looked nice. A fire was going in the fireplace. The furniture looked beautiful. The old woman pointed to the direction for the boys to go, and they all went upstairs. A cold air hit their skins, and an odd feeling touched each one of them. As the boys reached the 2nd floor, they looked down at the old woman. She stared at them with a hideous smile. Her teeth were crooked, and some were missing. Paul looked at the door to the left of him. He then felt every hair on the back of his neck stand. Something inside him told him to get the hell out now. Wayne shoved Paul, egging him on. Josh kept looking behind, making sure no one was going to pop up to scare them. Victor's eyes were tearing up as he was frightened to what lay behind the door. The boys could hear moaning sounds and heavy breathing. Paul backed away, starting to regret wanting to be scared. "Let's go home. I'm scared," Victor says as he stands behind Wayne. Wayne lifts his mask up over his head, then says he'll do it.
Move! I'll open it.
Wayne grabs the doorknob, then turns it. He yanks the door wide open.
What the fuck? Holy shit!
In their view is a man leaning over crying as he is sawing the head off of a young boy. The man is very large and hairy. On the walls of the room are shelves with children's heads sitting there with their eyes all open, their mouths sewn shut, and blood dripping from under their heads. There had to be over 100 heads in the room. Some lie on the floor. Some can be seen in garbage bags with their facial imprints in view. On the bookshelf that didn't hold books were more severed heads of children. They all had candles inside their heads lit like jack-o'-lanterns. Their mouths were sewn into stretched out smiles. There were no noses, eyes, or teeth on the severed heads sitting on the bookshelf. The hairy man turned to face the kid. His jaw was huge, and his mouth was long and curved down into a large frown. His face didn't look real, more like a wax mask. His eyes glowed a fiery red color as he began to stand up. He wore dirty, blood-stained clothes, and he started to laugh at the kids as they stared at him in horror. The man had to be 6'8". The large man had to lean down as his head touched the ceiling of the room. Josh ran, and the others followed behind, dropping their candy. At the bottom of the steps, the old woman stood holding a large steak knife. She cackled as she made her way to them. The boys were trapped. They had nowhere to go. The large man came out the room limping and laughing. Paul looked at his friends, then made a quick decision. He jumped over the staircase railing and landed on the floor. Then the other boys followed. As the boys hit the floor, they all were hurt. Paul ran out the door limping, and Victor passed him holding his broken arm. Josh crawled on the floor trying to stand up, but couldn't. His ankle was broken. He looked up to see Wayne struggling out the doorway.
"Wait for me! Help me, Wayne!"
Josh says, begging his friend. Wayne looked over to see the old witch floating his way. She wasn't walking, nor was she running. She floated to him with black eyes and a wide smile on her face.
Sorry, bro. I can't help you.
Wayne ran for his life. Josh crawled over to the door as it shut in his face. He then heard the large man walking down the steps towards him.
"I like his head. Take his head and place it with the others. Give your mother the best Halloween ever."
The large beastly man reached down, then grabbed Josh by the back of his neck and lifted him up with one hand. Josh yelled for help and struggled. The wild man slammed Josh's body into the wall to make him stop moving, then tossed him over his shoulder. Josh kicked and punched with all he had as he was taken upstairs to the room on the left. The old lady followed behind laughing, flailing her hands out, mocking Josh. Once in the room, the man grabbed his saw, then forced Josh's head over his knee. Josh scrambled around, calling for his mother and father. The man looked at his mother, smiling, revealing his yellow teeth. The old witch laughed. The old woman grabbed the boy by the hair, then looked him in the eyes.
"Trick your treat."
Please don't do this. Don't hurt me. Please.
The old woman says with a cackle. The man starts moving the saw back and forth. Blood squirts out as the skin opens up. Josh gags on his own blood. He can feel the metal inside his neck slicing through. His eyes roll back, and then his head falls off, hitting the floor. His eyes open. He sees his body in the wild large man's hands. Josh's eyes blink a few times as his memory goes black. The severed head sits on the floor, with a scared look left as Josh's last expression. The doorbell rings. The old woman turns around with her rotten teeth and black gum showing in her terrible smile. She grabs up the candy the other boys left behind, then tosses it in her basket, then makes her way to the front door. When she opens the door, she's in a whole new neighborhood with new trick-or-treaters to add to her collection.